The following program is rated TV MAL. It contains strong language and is intended only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion advised.
Hey everybody, welcome to the BeatCon Rewind podcast. I'm your host, the Big Llama from the Big Llama Show on YouTube. And the BeatCon Rewind podcast is a podcast about the movies. I bring on different guests and friends to talk about movies that we love, movies that we like. And recently we've been doing a very special presentation of the show and the podcast. And we're reviewing more movies that are just recently out. So we are very, very excited to get into the movie Blue Beetle, which just came out. It was released this week. So we want to give you a complete review, spoilers and all. So if you have not seen the movie, this is a spoiler review. You're going to hear everything about the movie. And I'm here with my good friend BLKOUT AD from BLKOUT AD or BLKOUT GG on YouTube. And he is here to review it with me. So welcome to the BeatCon Rewind podcast, BLKOUT AD.
What do you do, Llama?
What's up?
If they listen to the BeatCon frequently enough, they've heard my voice a bunch.
Of course. He's our content king over here. Before we start the show, as always, make sure to put those kids to bed. Put those fucking kids to bed. This is an adult pen. Exactly. Sleep on them, bitches. No, I'm just
Sleep on it.
Sleep on it. No, this is an adult podcast. We use some colorful language, so this is not for the kiddos. So make sure that they are not listening to this with you in the car or wherever you are.
And if you got bevs, I got a different kind of bev. I got an energy bev right now, trying to get me away because I did fall asleep during this movie. You got energy drink? Cheers, buddy.
Yeah. So you fall asleep?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh,
I snored a little bit. But not in a bad way. Okay. Let's go. Let's get right into it.
No, so there, I kind of want to talk about this movie in a couple of different parts. Like, obviously, let's break down the movie, and we'll talk about what the good, the bad of this movie, and then I kind of want to talk about the cultural significance of having a Hispanic superhero, and there's something to be talked about there. But to be honest, I don't like that kind of discussion, but I think you have to have it, right? Like, you have to at least acknowledge some of the things that they were doing for this and some things that they missed on doing. So, again, full review, our thoughts. I have not spoken with BLKOUT AD about this, so he just saw it today. So I have no idea if he likes it or not. So this is going to be an interesting reveal for me. So, AD, your initial thoughts on this movie.
Well, obviously, you got to preface this movie, right? Like, you can't go in thinking this is a big budget superhero movie. Like, originally it was slated to drop on HBO Max, which then they bumped it up and made it a full-length feature. Now, taking that into consideration, I think it's a wonderful movie. Now, if you're scaling it on like superhero, like how good is this movie in terms of the genre? It's pretty good. It's an average film. There's nothing special about it. I mean, it's a lot of tropes we've seen. But if you're judging it on the scale of an straight to HBO Max release, obviously we paid to go see it in theaters, and I think personally I'm happy I did because I think it really was a good movie to watch in theaters. But going in knowing that it was an HBO Max, it kind of I think it saved it. If I would have went in thinking this was like a full featured film, I would have kind of probably shit on it a little bit harder than I would have normally. But overall, I loved it. I think. Now I did fall asleep, but it was more because I was in the recliner seat and I was just comfortable. We just snacked on like a bunch of gummy snacks, some popcorn. I hit a whole thing of popcorn before the movie really got underway. So it was during. It's always the client. Like when it starts getting really serious in the movie, I fall asleep, and then I wake up and I watch like the main part. But like, yeah, overall, man, good movie though. What do you think?
So it was funny because the reviews I saw after, because I didn't want to listen to a lot of reviews before, but the reviews I saw after kind of mentioned the same thing that you did, which is you kind of prepped for a direct to release, HBO Max type thing. And, so that was also kind of weighing in my mind a little bit, just because we had talked about whether or not this was going to be released and so on and so forth. But I'll tell you that I absolutely love this movie. I thought it was phenomenal. what I said in my original review is, and my non-spoiler review, is that there is such thing as superhero fatigue. So like there's shit you've seen over and over and over, and almost every superhero origin story has a tragedy, has something that pushes the hero from reluctant hero to the hero, right? Something that motivates him and gets him from the story arc. So from that perspective, the movie is not original in that regard, right? Like it's your pretty standard textbook superhero film. What got me, and the reason that I love the film, is the aspect of the family, the family in this movie. And I think other than again, a lot of people are saying it's about forcing family tropes down. I think the characters are likable. I love the family dynamic. I thought Xolo did a good job. I thought George Lopez was a scene stealer. The grandmother was great.
Yeah.
I mean, there were just things that just worked, and that it was fun. It was fun. It was energetic, and it wasn't this ginormous, massive world. Like it wasn't the MCU, it wasn't the DCEU, it was just Blue Beetle's world, right? And that's kind of what I enjoyed about it. It was very small in scale, and it was self-contained, and I loved it. So I thought it was great.
So to that point, I do agree. I think the family aspect is what kind of made this movie stand out in terms of, because again, this is like, if this came out in 2008 when Iron Man came out, this would be a fantastic film. Right, yes. Like overall, but I mean, there's not much you can really change in terms, especially when you're coming from. Now you can like tweak things and like try to, but if you're really going through an origin story, you have to go through what makes the character. And most of the time, these comic books, the formula is pretty standard. You meet the nerd loses somebody, nerd gets powers. Nerd has to deal with the powers for at least 2 scenes. And then nerd beats the bad guy, like that's usually how it goes. Now with this movie, like you said, the family aspect, I agree. I thought George Lopez was like some things he was saying like early on was kind of just annoying. I was like, you're doing like too much of George, because it's like it's hard for me to not see that as George Lopez. Like I'm sure if it was like just some random guy saying the same shit, it'd be hilarious. But for me, I'm like, it feels like you turn to George Lopez to like 22. Like you're like super, but I like when they fleshed out his character and he becomes like more essential to like the Blue Beetle in terms of like he's almost like the guy in the chair, like in a way. And when that started unfolding, then I was like, oh yeah, I appreciate this a little bit more than I did early on. A lot of people were hating on like the sister, and I kind of went in with that notion of like the sister probably was annoying, but I didn't really see that. I just see her like being like that stereotypical like tell you how it is. Now, back to the family aspect though, like it really does remind me of like somebody in my family. Like everything they were doing, like it was like super like on point. The grandma, like I don't know if my grandma's really about to like kill that many people, but the way the way that she was acting, it definitely is like my grandma. I love the mother and the father, like how supportive they were of the children. I don't know. It was that aspect of it was really well written. What I didn't like though, and I want to know if you agree, the villain was god awful.
Yeah. The villain. Well, who, the female or the guy?
I don't even count the guy as the villain. He's a lapdog that started attacking.
Yeah, she was. I mean, she was trying to be evil, but it just didn't.
It felt so fake. Her performance is what always reminded me this was supposed to be on HBO Max. Okay. Like every time she comes on the scene, I'm like, oh, and her and Jenny, that's her name, the other cord, the younger cord.
Oh yeah.
Her, like their interactions with each other is like, what is this? Like this is not the movie that I was just having fun with. Like again, the family aspect works. What do you call it? It's like Jamie's character works a lot, sure. But it's when they went to like that family of like the Cords and like the beef between the dad and like
Yeah,
I didn't care about none of that. Like, I think if they would have just took the main lady out, even if they had her there, like to be like she's like the top. I think if you just had the dude be the bad guy, flesh out his story. Like, I love what they did with the memory thing. Like when they when they did the flashbacks. But imagine we got that in all those boring ass scenes when the lady was trying to boss people around and calling the guy Sanchez. Like, how many times are you gonna say the Sanchez joke? Now it did pay off when he said, "My name is not Sanchez Pendeja." That was classic.
It was good.
That made me like bust out laughing. I was like,
it was fun because it was so dead on. Like, you know, again, your average white lady just calling the guy, you know, Sanchez. I get that, but the joke did pay off later, and it was funny. But you're right. Like, if I would have gotten a more fleshed out backstory of the main guy villain, right, the lapdog, even that would have been building up to this guy is a tortured soul, and so he's at odds, but is doing a job and that would have made it a better dynamic between him and Blue Beetle because
there was like a weird. That's the thing. Like, this storyline could have worked if the lady was not phoning it in like Busta Rhymes did at your concert.
Yeah, exactly.
But seriously though, like if she was more of an interesting bad guy and they played more of the role of like what he went through with her and like how he was a tortured soul, and they kind of because like at one point when they're both connected and they're stealing the scarab's like data, there was like a mirror of like a young, I mean, again, you don't really want to talk about it, but it's like, not that you don't want to talk about it, but I'm saying like it's kind of like you have to like mention like the dynamics. They really played on like what it's like being Hispanic. So it's like
exactly
a white lady controlling a Hispanic dude to do her dirty work, and then like the new up and coming kid where she's kind of like, just kill him, like we don't need him, you know, like dispose of him. And it's kind of like that, damn, this is what he was early on to her, and then he just stayed long enough to where she kind of fake cares about him, because obviously she doesn't. At the end of the day, she just wants the scarab for herself so she can sell this billion. I mean, it would have been really bad if that kind of like even got close to being real. You know, like the threat was real. The threat was real, but I think her, like I don't know, if you just had the dude and had the flashbacks throughout the movie and those scenes, you would understand him more, and then you would see the similarities between him and Jaime. Like, I think that dynamic would have worked way better, but that kind of leads me to like the end. Like the end kind of was like, like I saw all this coming, you know, like great movie,
of course.
and what it does well, basic in what it does kind of like every other movie, you know. It's like it's very mid-tier shit, to be honest, if we're being
and it started off like almost like Jurassic Park, like oh look, we found the ember, and oh we found the scarab. Like it's like, how'd you find it? In a remote reaches of the jungle. Here comes this white lady and her crew, and here comes the cord, right? And they find the scarab, and so it's like it's every movie finds the, you know, the MacGuffin, right? Finds the scarab. It finds it right there, and so yes, that's where I'm saying it's a basic premise across the board. The performances, the interactions, the acting, in some parts, make it an enjoyable experience. But I will say this, and this is why I wanted to break it down into two, but we can talk about some parts now, right? My experience with this, I tried to be objective, right? I tried to say, let me just look at this as a superhero movie. I don't want to look at this as a Hispanic superhero. I don't want to look at this as, but everything I saw was a reflection of my family. And that's kind of why I think, and I will admit, I think I probably enjoyed it more than most people because of that.
I also think that has a big thing to do, because again, it's a lot of things that I know probably people in your family watching novellas and like super in depth with it and like, you know, like on it. I'm telling you, like the grandma character really reminded me of like my grandma. And I knew it was going to happen when I was watching the reviews ahead of time. And I was like, damn, that really does sound like my grandma. But watching it, I was like this feels like, it feels like again, good representation. And you need that. And and we deserve, like everybody deserves to get represented in movies, I believe. So it's like, And in that aspect, like they did a really good job of like really give it wasn't bullshit quotes. Now, what kind of did annoy me when it comes to that is like how they portrayed the white people, like it was like super like on the nose of like them being like super. It was like it's like you're doing so much good on this side, but then you're like you're hammering and you're doing it in corny ways. It's not. I mean, think about it. The Sanchez joke, right? But then the lady at the desk calling him Jamie when he said Jaime like 3 times. Yeah. He said Jaime, and she goes, "Okay, Jamie." Like so, but then I also took that as like the gentrifying, like them like gentrifying the scene. You know, he's like, "No, you're Jamie. Like, stop that." You know, like
exactly, yeah.
Like around here, you're Jamie. You know, so somebody said in a review it would have been funnier if he like wrote the name down or had to spell it for her, and she's like, "What?" It's like, "Spell that for me." Spell it, and then it's like, and he goes, "Oh, Jamie. Okay, yeah, okay, Jamie." You know, like it would have been a little bit funnier if they did that, but
yeah,
it's just those aspects of it. It was like too on the nose. It's like, all right, we get it. Like you're gentrifying it, we get that part, but like when they were in the where they lived, like when they were together, when the references they were making. I mean, they had the "y fuera." I saw that I died. I was like, let's go.
No, honestly, I think again that's why I'll be honest about my review of it. I think that played a lot into my enjoyment of it. I tried to separate it, and the more I separate it, it's exactly what we talked about in the beginning, which is in its premise, basic. But the acting and the story I enjoyed it. It's simple, but it was self-contained, and this is why I keep bringing up superhero fatigue. Is just it was contained. I'm not worried about how he impacts the greater DCEU, which I know is coming up if they continue, right? But I didn't care. That's why I felt like, okay, I can enjoy this story and not have to worry about how does he interact with Superman, how is he how is he with Batman, how all this kind of stuff. So
nothing about that really like intrigued you, especially knowing about the James Gunn, like because they said now I don't know if it was a ploy to just be like, yeah, this movie is part of the future of the DCEU, like the new DCEU, just to keep everybody interested in it, like we have to watch it, or they actually are concerned about bringing this character in. Now my thing is like I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, bro, if this movie actually got the DCU budget, right, a better writer, and not for the whole thing, but just like certain things needed to be cleaned up in this script itself. So right. Like a better writer, and they kept the same like feeling of this movie in terms of like the family. Like I think this movie would be like a Black Panther. Like if it had the budget, it had the marketing, it had the story to really impact culture. I think this movie would have done a lot for like what we were talking about, just a Hispanic-led character, But
it would have been an event. It would have been an event movie at that point.
100%, 100%. Right. But to me, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, well, if this movie I'm sure they weren't expecting it to make crazy amount of money, especially going to HBO Max, right? So like, if it even comes close to what they're projecting, I think they will continue, especially with how it ended, like the end of it. Now, what I didn't like about the initial, like you said, it was really contained to the point where they kind of did a bad job with like Jenny's dad and him being the Blue Beetle, because that was never mentioned in the early on portion of the movie until they went to the house. It was like, your dad's Blue Beetle. It's like,
George Lopez, he's an established character.
He's like, wait, what? Like, so you knew about Blue Beetle the whole time, and then you were wondering what this big Blue Beetle was?
Exactly, what the scarab was? Like, come on, man. No, but you're right. I think that those are some misses, right? Like that if you just introduced them early, it's okay to say that there was a legend of a Blue Beetle, right? Or a Batman type Blue Beetle guy in that city. I think that would have lent to like, okay, the reveals would have felt better, right? Would have felt like stronger reveals when you go, there was the legend and it's true. Here it is. It was her father, who apparently is still alive based on the post credit. But the one thing I think when you mentioned James Gunn, and I think this is why I think it's a good start. I just hope that they keep investing it. Like it made 30 million first run. it's $100 million movie. It's gonna have to have 3 more weekends like that to just break even, and it probably won't. So if they have faith in Xolo, in that character, he'll return. But I don't know if he gets another Blue Beetle movie, right? Like he's good enough a character that I would put him somewhere else, and he'll probably shine and help that whatever other movie he's in. But going back to James Gunn, think about Guardians of the Galaxy. If you really think about the first movie, again, obscure characters that you know what I couldn't stand, man, is like watching reviewers who know nothing about comic books talk about Ted Kord. Like they knew who the fuck Ted Kord was in the Blue Beetle, like before the reveal, before this, like they knew what these things, like they never heard of this stuff, and here they are, like espousing about the young, I forgot what they're called, but again, like their version of the Avengers, just like younger.
Yeah,
and so
the Teen Justice League or whatever.
Yeah, something like that, the Young League or some shit like that. But that's what I'm saying. Like James Gunn is good at that, like telling the story about one initial, and then they grow on you, and so each Guardians movie, if you really watch them, you're not really worried about the bigger universe until they get into the other movies with the other characters, and so you're there for that movie, that story, and these people, and you grow to love them. So I think that's why I like this so much. It was like, I love the Blue Beetle. I like this guy I like Xolo as the Blue Beetle, like Jaime. I like it all, and I want to see more of that. But again, it was good for me because of that. It was just, I keep saying it, but that's how I look at the movie. But to the other point, obviously, everything looked like things that I've experienced, and so that's why my excitement for it was through the roof. And then the one thing that like stuck with me was the telenovela, the one that they were all singing.
Yeah,
like that was back in my day, right? That was like event TV, like the big reveals of who the lover was. My family like would go to each other's houses on like Thursday and Friday nights, and that's what we would all sit and watch this thing. And when they had the big reveal, like they all would clutch their pearls and like they would all talk about it for 2 hours. But
yeah.
So them singing the songs, I remember doing that. I remember knowing all these things. So no, just again, very interesting point there for this movie. But the effects, what did you think of the effects in the movie?
It's HBO Max movie, dude. You know what I mean? Like that's all I can say to myself, like, because it wasn't that great. Like, again, if you're comparing it, it doesn't compare. But for what it is and what it was projected to be, I think it was good. I do think they could have went like, it felt like everything was like too bright. It felt like I was like watching like a fucking Fanta commercial. Like it like like it was like, it just like everything was bright. Even like the fight scenes were like bright. I felt like this could have been a little darker in tone, and it probably would have worked even better. Like when he initially transformed, and even like how the Blue Beetle, like it kind of was like horror-ish.
Yeah,
and like if they would have took that and made it like a tone of the movie, like just a little darker, it just felt, to me, it felt like everybody was like too happy-go-lucky, and like the sad to me, what worked the best for me was like the sad moments. You know, like,
ask you about that. I was going to ask you. Well, I mean, that one gets close to home to you, so I kind of I didn't say anything to you, but I kind of wanted to know. Again, let's talk about that. So, first of all, to your point,
that's when I fell asleep, though.
Oh, did you? No.
I woke up right when it happened.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Before we get to that part, but to your point, I think early test screenings had it looking like a Power Rangers movie. I think that's why you see the color differences. I had read that after I watched it. I read a bunch of articles, and one of them said there's a problem with how he transforms into the Blue Beetle, and then how he kind of is portrayed the rest of the movie, because it was kind of cartoony and Power Rangery the way that they wanted to do it, but then they decided to go to a darker tone, but not like tone in the movie, like tone in color and then the scheme. So, but overall, it was very bright. It was a very bright.
Honestly, it felt like a Saturday morning cartoon. Like it felt like exactly that. Like there's a bad guy. They beat the bad guy by the end of the episode. You know what I mean? And the Power Ranger. A lot of people were saying the Power Rangers comparison, but
yeah.
Truthfully, I mean, you got the Beetle, the actual
more
Beetle
recent
machine.
movie. Yeah.
I mean, everything. It really was like that. But again, for me, I would have enjoyed more of a darker tone in terms of like, because again, when it got dark, all right, let's just say it, like when the dad died, and from that point on, you saw the emotion in the family, like, because early on, they framed it well, like he was the leader of them, right? Like he was their guy. They all turned to him. He was sitting at the head of the table, all that shit. And it's kind of the passing of the torch. I mean, they had their moment outside where the dad was drinking a little bit, you know, and he looked like he was crying, you know.
Yep.
They had their moment. He was like, you know, you got to find your purpose. It's almost like the Uncle Ben thing. But then he has the heart. Now, I fell asleep whenever he had the heart attack, and I didn't see that part. But I woke up when they were trying to revive him in the ambulance. And yeah, it was pretty sad. But I think what hit me the hardest was when the grandma was like, there's no time to cry right now. Like, we got to get this shit done. And then at the end, she was like, all right, now this is the time.
Now we can cry.
Yeah. That's where I felt like the emotions of all of it. Like, it was kind of like a build up. Like, all right, you know, he didn't get to see his father die, or like, you know, there was a lot of things in that. So yeah. I don't know. I wasn't crying or nothing, Llama.
Well, you know, I cry at freaking a coffee commercial. No, but I kind of thought they were setting up the grandmother to die, right? Like that's the likely character because she had that goofy, you know, it's in the trailers where she has the gun, and I'm like, they're probably setting her up, and then they kept cartoonishly adding more to her backstory, and I was like, okay, there's nothing that's going to happen with her. But it was telegraphed, I think, a little bit that the father, especially you're right, at that discussion. But I think what worked for me in that moment is the acting of that whole scene. So when he got punched in the face, when the father gets punched in the face, and you hear what sounds like flatline, like it's like a ringing sound, I said, "Oh shit, they're gonna kill the dad. The dad's gonna die." But I'll tell you, it was so impactful to see the family just watch him die. That's, I think, what got me. I had a feeling he was gonna die. So I was like, all right, well, I'm getting prepared for that. Because emotionally, I connected with the father. I was like, you know, that I am the father of my family, that type of thing. Yeah. And so the part that I could not like stop the tears from coming was that piece. Was like they're watching him die. He is handcuffed or he is, you know, being restrained. And so that was heartbreaking. And that was heartbreaking because the performances across the board, all of them, even the girl, the sister, like when she broke down crying, it wasn't even worse. I'm just saying you can sense
there was like
emotional. Yeah.
I don't remember which scene, but she just started crying.
Yeah.
Like, and that, like, it was like, I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like you felt like what she was feeling. Like she was a good crier.
She had the you know, chin quivering and everything. And I think, like I said, I think that was the most impactful part because again, you start to reflect and sort of put yourself in that light. You say, okay, that's me as the character, or that's such and such. But it was the relationship between Jaime and his dad. I didn't say it seemed real, but it was very convincing, right? Like as acting and portrayal. And instead of them being, you know, lost without him, they rallied, right, as they always do. And I think that was the resilience piece of that family, of that culture, is that we're constantly kicked, and that's what they're saying. We're constantly down, but we're not out. We continue to move on, no matter what happens. So I think that was Jaime's arc, right? It's like he had to find how to deal with being on his own and how to deal without him giving him the answers and being the support system. And again, I think that's kind of the the one thing that again, I was emotional at that part. I was emotional, I think, at the end when she said, now you can cry, because that gives you the closure that you need, right? But it was tough though. It's tough. And I know I have kids, you don't, and but you also went through, losing your father, and so I don't know how you felt on that scene. I put myself in his shoes. I said, what if I'm the father, right? And I'm gone, and that's kind of what gets the emotions and tears going. So but again, I think that was a well done scene, and honestly, Jaime's performance in that, moving that beyond, the emotion was finally there. Like before, he's the let me see how this goes, right? Yeah. To anger and feeling, and he really sort of comes around to his own. So I think that was done really well. So
I mean, I'm glad they didn't kill off George Lopez's character too, because I mean, when you think about it, that was his emotional, because it wasn't necessarily the father. He didn't really find out until he saw the sister or whatever. So when he saw the uncle fall and it looked like he was gonna die, it was kind of like, oh shit, like this is way more serious than I thought, and I need to be the one to stop it. I'm the only one that can. Now, off of the emotional shit, what do you think about the scarab itself and like the powers and like Blue Beetle as like a superhero?
I didn't. He's okay. So if I'm honest, I compare him. You compare, it's like Iron Man meets Venom, right? Like he's got like these, and like Green Lantern, like there's where he can conjure up, so there's a little bit of everything. They use the Iron Man, like seeing his vision type thing with him in the suit. The Venom, piece where it's taking over his body. I thought that was well done.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
But I didn't know anything about Blue Beetle, but I enjoy the character. I don't know that I would like the non-scarab Blue Beetle. Like he just seems like Batman. He has tech. He seems like Iron Man. I don't know. I kind of like the fact that he is, and explains it. Like he cannot get rid of the scarab unless he dies. Yeah. So he's there for life. It's not like he can just turn it off. So I enjoyed it. I don't, like I said, I'm learning more about the Blue Beetle, and I think I kind of like it, but it's the character that I fell in love with. It's the acting that happened where I connected, and that was good. It was a good thing. It's the same thing with Tony Stark. When you finally figure out who Tony Stark is in Iron Man 1, you connect with Tony Stark, and then he becomes your emotion throughout the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was like my first experience with the Blue Beetle as well. I thought the powers were cool. I thought, the tech is kind of cool. And I even this is not the Blue Beetle itself, but the city, like how the city looked, I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
That was awesome.
I really enjoyed
like an anime. That was like an anime city.
Yeah, it was like when they do like futuristic style Justice League type things, that's what the city like kind of reminded me of. Again, like a Saturday morning cartoon, like, oh, it's called Young Justice. That's what it's called.
Young Justice.
I just thought about it because that's exactly what I'm thinking of.
We're butchering it.
Little League Justice. But yeah, with the Blue Beetle itself, I thought the powers were cool. Now, I would be interested in seeing a non-scarab Blue Beetle, but I would hope either one of two things. He's kind of like gritty because obviously he's been gone for a while. They made him sound really nerdy in the clip where he's like, tell her father's alive still. But
they got to get the Batman count, like, tell him her father's alive.
Yeah, right. Like that's so to me, it's like it could go one of two ways, and they're probably leaning towards one specific one, but one where he's kind of like a gritty veteran, where he like. At this point, especially like being gone for who knows what he's been going through, right?
Right.
So it's probably like a gritty veteran, or he could be like same kind of gritty veteran, but not as like badass, but a little bit more of a comic relief. Like I think they can go that route too, where he's like kind of goofy, a little nerdy, just loves it, really truly loves it. He's like almost like a scientist, but that has the powers.
Right, and then now he's comparing himself to like, man, your suit can do that. My suit don't do that. Like that type of shit.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about obviously my favorite part of the movie, the favorite thing, This guy right here. El Chapulín Colorado, which is one of my favorite all-time characters. And that was the one, it didn't sell me, right? Like it wasn't the reason I loved the movie, but I was grinning ear to ear when he said what he called the George Lopez said, this is a Chapulín. And I was like, oh, I know what this thing is. I know exactly what this thing is. And when he put it on the TV screen and you saw this little fucking character come out, I was like a kid, dude, because I remember
bring it up. I knew it.
You know, I was gonna bring it up.
I saw it because I went with Tang. I said, I hit him like that. I was like, Llama bought that skin in Fortnite. and then also in
if it's in Call of Duty, I'm buying it.
Dude, you gotta dress up like it one year.
You know what? I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to because
I need to go with you and just vlog us going trick or treating while you're dressed like that, asking people for candy. I'm like, don't worry, he's a Make-A-Wish kid.
Got a big ass belly. This kid. No, it was funny because the generational like touch points, right? That telenovela that they were talking about was a more recent one, but I still know it. But this was more for the 80s heads, the kids that grew up in the 80s who watched this show. That kind of was like their moment. Like, here, let me give you something that you remember. And so that's and I think, like I said, it's kind of where the movie fails to connect with the bigger audience sometimes, and that's okay. And that's the problem with this movie, is that a lot of the criticisms, right, of the movie, especially from guys who don't understand Hispanic culture or don't know the references, they kind of like, haha, that's funny, but what does that mean? Like, they don't even know. And that's kind of where you lose the wider audience, which is fine. You have to make it so that it's appealing to the masses. And so,
but I also feel like it shouldn't, like, I think they did it again. My only problem with it being as Hispanic centered is like the other races like view on it. You know, it's like it was like very much they're looking down on us all the time type shit.
And that's the wrong way to do it. I think that's my problem with it. Like Shang-Chi, right? Like if you look at that one, it's culturally appropriate how they put together, but it's because it's contained in that world. So this is not even though in the early part of it they're kind of in the regular world, but then when they start, it wasn't like so on the nose that there was a problem with his ethnicity, right, or where he came from.
But even in Black Panther, they did it the opposite way.
Yeah,
where like they were making fun of like the outside, so like they flipped it, which I think that works way better than as if they kind of did it as well with like George Lopez, like being like Batman's a fascist and like saying like he was the one that was like kind of like calling shit out, really, not everybody else. It was basically George Lopez, but the other way around, it just felt like too on the nose. And I do feel what you're saying. So we went with Tang and then one of his homies. I feel like, I don't know if he said it for sure, because I didn't even really ask him, but I felt like he was like, it wasn't that good. And it's a white dude. And I was like, I feel like he probably just doesn't connect with it as much, like, because again, they weren't like explaining, which they shouldn't have to, but they didn't explain anything, which, again, it's for that audience. I think if this movie had a bigger budget and was like, they didn't promo it correctly to make it hit the masses, because again, if this got out and was like a Black Panther version of this, would have been massive. It could have been. It had a lot of right things, but it's not the right movie, I don't think. Like, it has a lot of the seeds that a movie like this center around not just Hispanics, but all cultures. Like, this is what you do right, and there's some things in there that you can do without. There's just a right way to portray a culture on screen and not make it feel again like where it's like we're spoon feeding you.
Exactly. And I think it was just, and this is why I think it's released. It was just James Gunn enough, right, for him to feel like it's a contained story. He likes the storytelling in it, but I think the problem is when And again, I think James Gunn had a pretty good control on the promos for Guardians and stuff, because he made it about the characters, he made it about the music in it, like he made it an experience. So that was what was missing, is like, what's your experience coming into this? What are you going to see? Black Panther did it really well, because again, you're dealing with, and the like people from Wakanda in the movie were commenting on how good they have it versus them, and that the whole plight wasn't that the world is against them, it's that we have the power and resources to be the civilization that everyone wants to be, and we're not doing anything to help people who look like us. And I think that's a better way of bringing that cultural awareness.
To me, it's just a fresher way. It's like the other way's been done so much. It's like, like again, rich culture. Like if you're going to target different cultures and bring them this to the forefront, like show how rich the culture is, how much their culture offers in any aspect. And I think that's what Black Panther done well. Blue Beetle has done well, and even like with the family aspect and the culture, like the Miss Marvel. Even though I didn't finish Miss Marvel, that was definitely one of like those things worked in that show. So, like again, it's just understanding what the culture is and like how you portray it and get it to the people and make the people who are from that culture feel like, wow, you're really representing, like, again, the people in this movie felt like people I know in my family.
100%. Exactly. So let's get to rating this thing. So like, your overall thoughts and ratings on it as we close out the pod. So what's your thought on it?
If I had to be honest, I'd give it like a 5.9. Okay. Like it's good. I don't want to do that. Like, yeah, like 6.5. I'll go 6.5 because it's like it's really good for what I like about it, but it's not overall. The movie isn't that great. Now, I do say if you are interested in watching it, you feel like the movie speaks to you when you watch the trailer, do go see it in theater. It's worth going to see it in theater, but just know what you're watching. Like, don't expect it to be fucking Avengers Endgame. Like, it's not that level, not that budget. Just understand that what it is, and I think you'll enjoy it. I think if you really go in this movie, you're interested, you'll enjoy the movie. Like, what do you think?
I agree. Well, so I will tell you, my personal rating on this, I would give it a 7.5, 8, and because I enjoyed it. And so I'm not going to sugarcoat that fact. I enjoyed it, but I do know why I enjoy it, and that's kind of the difference between like me, because I want to be fair and objective on these things. So I enjoyed it 7.5, 8 total movie for me, my experience. But if I'm taking a step back and I remove myself from my personal biases and what I felt the connections were to the family, it's probably closer to your rating and maybe a 6.5, a 6, where it just has some the things were too simple and too straightforward. And yes, the cultural sort of communication between whites and Hispanics and the state of the world, gentrification, all that stuff. It's great to bring those out, but you got to do it smarter. I think that's the problem. I like the things that were there for me to connect with the Hispanic side and the Latinos, right? I love that fact. But the other stuff you could do without, or there's a smarter way to introduce it. Just the fact, again, I liked when they introduced the city and they said, look, it's not what it used to be. The corporations are buying it up. That's reality. That is the reality for all races and all cultures, and it does impact Hispanics, but that's a good way of doing that. Now, when you talk about how you say their names and you forget, like it's a trope, and it's kind of insulting to the fan who does not understand it, and it can turn people off. So I'll be honest, the 6.5 if I'm not taking it, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm and I watched it in IMAX, which for me changes a little bit of the experience auditory wise and what you see. But again, I'm always honest about that piece. Like, is it just because it was an IMAX that I enjoyed it or not? I just enjoyed the family. It touched me, but I get it. I get the criticism. So I don't disagree with the 6.5 rating that you gave it. So But like you said, I think if anyone is curious about this movie, definitely go see it. If you want to see, again, it's a different type of superhero movie. It's a little bit smaller. It's not as big. There are some pretty dark scenes, but for the most part, it's what you've gotten in almost every superhero movie. So if you're debating on it, go see it. I would say go see it.
If not, just wait for it. We'll definitely watch it on HBO Max. If not,
if
you don't go see it, definitely watch it. But I just think if you're intrigued, right, it's not a bad movie to go if you just want to go on a day or go eat some popcorn. Like, it's not a bad film to go watch in theaters. But if not, it's definitely a great movie to just sit down and watch at home for sure. Like if I didn't watch this in theaters and I just seen it, put it on, I'd enjoy it probably a little bit more because again, it's like HBO Max. Oh, this came on HBO. It's like there's just that weird thing we do where it's like, all right, this is where it's from. It's a little bit lower standard than what I'm expecting in the movie. But
well, again, marketing didn't help it. And
I rarely saw trailers. Rarely, like once and I watch YouTube all day. It's like once, and I'm looking for shit like that. So like even the algorithm wasn't pushing it. So
yeah. Actually, when I looked for reviews, they were pretty low on the views for across the board. Like people who were reviewing it, that it just didn't have the interest level that most people wanted for it. So we'll see if there's going to be a Blue Beetle Part 2. We'll see if they're going to move forward with the storyline. I think Xolo can be used in other movies that may feature DC characters. I think he's a good spark. Will he get his own movie again? I don't think so. I don't know. This movie's already.
I think it will though. I think because again, like for what it was, he did a wonderful job. For this being an HBO Max movie, fantastic job. Give him another one, even if you don't put him on the big screen. Give him another one to do the HBO thing. Now it's again. James Gunn can tweak this, I think, too. Like, it already has good bones. Yes, you get the right creative energy around it. You put the right ideas to it. This can be another, and you put it on HBO Max, a little bit better, maybe a little bit bigger budget, just a tiny bit, I think, in terms of like budgeting, because the character itself needs a little bit bigger of a budget. Yeah. Because you need the CGI. But overall, like if they tweaked it a little bit, this has the good bones to be something great down the line. So they might have something really, I think.
No worries, man. That's I agree. So all right. So I think that's it for the BCom Rewind podcast tonight. I want to thank again BLKOUT AD, my co-host for the Sunday night live stream. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Again, he's in a lot of our content, but when he's passionate about something, I love to get him on because like we said, like him and I sometimes don't see eye to eye, and I'm glad that we have different opinion on it, but this was good conversation. So if you want to watch more BCon Rewinds or listen to more BCon Rewinds, if you're listening on podcasts, make sure you subscribe and follow this podcast. If you're on YouTube and you're watching this, please make sure you like and subscribe on the Big Llama Show YouTube channel. And BLKOUT AD, where can they find your content and your information?
Blackout.gg. Just check us out there on the YouTube channel. Me, Roman 2 Raw, Jay Birdie. We're putting in a lot of work. We had Big Poppy Angie on the Blackout channel. Llama's been there. But we're doing some good work, man. And I gotta say, we didn't get to talk this weekend, but thank you for having me on the Big Llama Show Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern with the boys. I thought that was a great episode. So go check that out if you haven't. And just be on the lookout, man. We're making a lot of content lately.
For sure. So guys, that'll do it for the BCon Rewind podcast. I am the Big Llama. He is BLKOUT AD. Thank you, guys. Join us back here for more movie discussions about movies we love, movies we hate, new movies, old movies. Just come back for the discussion here on the BCon Rewind podcast. All right, we're signing off. I'm Big Llama. He's BLKOUT AD. Have a good night, everybody.
Off, I don't care what you people say. Never follow rules. I'm a trendsetter anyway. Okay, I march to the beat of my own drum. They say I need rules in my life. Well, I got some. That's 1. Kill the competition. 2. Be a loyal dog. 3. And if they snitching on your man, send them to the morgue. 4. When you party, go hard till you hit the floor. 5. If you didn't see me do it, what the hell you asking for? Welcome to my world. SIN